I put political notebook on here for that lead story of time up there at the top because I don't expect it to be time.
Political notebook.
We're live.
Pardon me?
We're live. You're opening.
Okay. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for today, Friday, March 27th of 2026. Your readers today are
Don Williams
and J.J. Patek. Welcome to the newspaper today, and we start out as we do with the weather. Today is going to be partially sunny and colder today with a high of 35. I'm sure that sun should be coming out. It's not here now. It's mainly clear tonight with a snow shower late, low of 22. Times of clouds and sun tomorrow with snow showers and breezy and cold with a high of 34, and it'll be a low of 28. Sunday is going to be breezy and not as cold with a high of 49 and a low of 39. And Monday we will have a shower in the afternoon with a high of 54 and a low of 47. Tuesday, rain and drizzle with a high of 58 and a low of 51. Wednesday, an evening thunderstorm with a high of 55 and a low of 37. And Thursday, clouds and sunshine with a high of 52 and a low of 42. So it looks like it may be springing upward. We're all eager for that. The temperature high yesterday was 55 and the low was 46. The normal high is 46, the normal low is 29. The record high back in 1945 was 81 degrees. The record low was 7 degrees in 1960, and last year was a high of 37 with a low of 29. Nationally, Hugoton, Kansas had 102 degrees yesterday. I think it's a little much for me. And Rolla, North Dakota was a low with 9 degrees. The air quality index is good. And this morning, the sun rose up behind those clouds at 7:07 a.m., and the sun will set at 7:36 p.m. And the moon rise will be at 1:45 p.m., and it's set at 7:33 a.m. So that's our weather for today.
Yeah, they're still showing the snow derby on the page, but we're not going to be
Well,
seeing
they
much
typically end that, I think, May
March.
1st or something.
Is it May 1st? Okay.
I'm not sure which day it is, but it could still, this is Buffalo. You can get snow in June.
Yeah, well, we had a bit of snow the other day. It was a really nice snow flurry late afternoon. And that particular day I had seen earlier in the day, 5 states had snow warnings: Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Northern New York, and Hawaii.
Yes. Well, Hawaii gets snow on the volcanoes.
And the summits on the Big Island, yep.
Yes, they do.
Well, we're going to look at the front page. Justin Sandell tells us that Assembly Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes has thrown cold water on Mayor Sean Ryan's plan to use Buffalo's control board to borrow upward of $500 million as his administration works to dig the city out of its fiscal hole. In a letter to Ryan shared with the news media, Peoples-Stokes said that after meeting with Ryan and his staff about the plan, which requires the approval of the state legislature, she still has many questions and does not feel the bill should be included in the budget, a critical aspect of the plan, because of the timing of the state and city budget schedules. The Ryan administration must present its proposed budget to the Common Council by April 15th, and he and the Common Council must set a finalized budget by June 8th. The state budget is due April 1st, although it has often come in late over the years. Last year it was finalized on May 9th. Were the bill included in an on-time budget, it would give Ryan and his team more certainty and would allow borrowing as an option in their own proposed budget. In addition, Ryan has said he wants to move away from a plan put in place by former mayor and current South District Council member Christopher Scanlon to sell city parking ramps to a newly created entity to raise $26.5 million in revenue included in the current budget. In order to do so, Ryan would need to borrow that money through the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority, sometimes known as the Control Board. If the bill allowing the borrowing is not included in the state budget, it could still pass in the remainder of the legislative session, which ends in June. But Ryan needs to either sell the ramps or borrow the money by the end of June to close out the current fiscal year. Ryan, the spokesman, said in a statement that Ryan intends to address all of Peoples-Stokes' concerns. The bill would allow the Ryan administration to borrow up to $500 million in deficit bonds, borrowing used to pay for operational costs without the control board entering a control period under which the state authority would have broad control over city finances. Under the law that established the BFSA, Buffalo's Fiscal Stability Authority, there we go, in 2003, deficit borrowing through the control board would trigger a control period. The limit for any borrowing was $175 million. He's looking for nearly 3 times that. Peoples-Stokes, in a phone interview with the News, said her colleagues in Albany have expressed concerns about the bill setting a precedent in which other municipalities could request to engage deficit borrowing without having a control board put in place or a control period triggered. From the conversations that I've been having in and around Albany, there's not an appetite to open this Pandora's box to allow municipalities to borrow money without the control board going into a higher fashion, Peoples-Stokes said. So that is just going to be a challenge, no matter whether it's in the budget or not. In her letter, Peoples-Stokes said many constituents in her district, which includes large swaths of Buffalo's east side, are concerned about the 25% tax increase Ryan said he will propose this year. Even more troubling is how this potential tax increase is being communicated. It fails to account for the compounded impact of reassessments, which in some cases could result in tax bills doubling or even tripling for homeowners, as well as the increasing costs of utilities and the recently increased user fees and water rates. We must find a way to bring real fairness to our most vulnerable residents, Peoples-Stokes said in the letter. Peoples-Stokes listed 30 questions and concerns in her letter. She also asked Ryan for a breakdown of the $109 million anticipated structural deficit for next year's budget that Ryan has referenced in public statements, how much his administration anticipates it will increase spending in the coming fiscal year, details on the fiscal impact of the borrowing plan, including how it might affect the city's bond rating, information on whether the Common Council supports the state bill, and whether the city plans to reduce the workforce. Peoples-Stokes, who was a colleague of Ryan's during his 14 years in the legislature, said she understands he has walked into a difficult situation with a large structural deficit and no remaining reserve funds to help him dig out. But she said she needs more clarity on what his plans are with the deficit bonds before she can get on board. We'll have another conversation, and maybe there'll be a way to make some things work, or maybe there will be a way to get additional resources from the state, Peoples-Stokes said. I don't know what the possibilities are, but I know we have to have a conversation because, again, people in Buffalo cannot afford 25% property taxes. And she said she will continue to advocate for other forms of assistance for the city, including making increases to state AIM funding for the city permanent and tied to cost of living, and getting the city a bigger share of Erie County sales tax revenues. When elected officials work together, the people fare better, she said. I've seen it happen in Buffalo. I believe it can happen again.
Thank you.
Just we'll have to wait and see.
We'll see. And another one of those stories that won't go away. From Patrick LeCamp. Bongiovanni won't be jailed as team appeals conviction. A prosecutor Thursday pushed back on the notion that Joseph Bongiovanni, the first DEA agent in Western New York convicted of public corruption charges, should delay reporting prison while he appeals his conviction to the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. But U.S. District Judge Lawrence Villardo ruled Bongiovanni, 61, can remain on home incarceration as he has since the October 2024 jury verdict that convicted him on 7 of 11 charges in his retrial. If I detain Mr. Bongiovanni now and he goes to jail and the Second Circuit reverses me, he would have served time in jail and he shouldn't have, Villardo said. But if the appellate court affirms Velardo's rulings and allows the conviction to stand, the only drawback is that Bongiovanni will have waited before reporting to prison for his 5-year prison term, Velardo said. Velardo said he easily found that Bongiovanni was not a flight risk or pose a danger to the community, given that he's abided by his conditions of release since his indictment in 2019. The judge also found that Bongiovanni did not request the continued bail simply to stall reporting to prison. The tougher question was whether defense lawyers Parker McKay and Robert Singer raised a question of law and fact that, if the appellate court agrees with Bongiovanni, would lead to a reversal. Velardo said Bongiovanni's lawyers have made some arguments about his rulings that would lead to the verdict being set aside if the Second Circuit agrees with the defense arguments. I think I make the right rulings, but sometimes the Second Circuit disagrees with me, Velardo said. This is a hard decision, he said of his decision to keep Bongiovanni out of prison for now. These were not easy questions for me to answer. Assistant U.S. Attorney Joseph Trippi said beyond the legal arguments hashed over before Velardo at Thursday's oral argument is public perception in a public corruption case. Other defendants go to prison after they're sentenced, Trippi said, adding that there must be a perception of consistency in who's allowed to remain free after conviction. If he was indicted, tried, convicted, and sentenced, Trippi said of Bongiovanni, and that not a lot of defendants are walking around free with that resume. To continue bail for the retired DEA agent, his lawyers had to convince the judge that his appeal raises a substantial question of law or fact likely to result in reversal. They haven't raised a substantial question at all, Trippi said in court. The motion from the defense lawyers previewed some of what Bongiovanni will argue in his appeal to overturn his conviction and 5-year prison sentence. The issues include references to organized crime during the trial, and what the defense saw as governmental intimidation tactics that chilled his access to favorable witnesses, and a challenge to the scope of the narcotics conspiracy. The government frames its response as if Mr. Bongiovanni must at this point put forth his entire appellate briefing and carry the day overwhelmingly on each issue, defense lawyers said in a court filing before Thursday's court appearance. At this stage, the court must only decide that a question is fairly debatable. Mr. Bongiovanni has satisfied this standard. The prosecutor argued that Bongiovanni has not proven that he's not a flight risk or danger to any person in the community, Trippi said. Before his conviction and sentencing, the government had to show Bongiovanni was a flight risk or danger to the community when seeking to keep him in custody as his case proceeded. Judges kept Bongiovanni out of custody before and during his trial. Bongiovanni has worn an ankle monitor off and on for the past 7 years. However, after the verdict, the burden was now on Bongiovanni to show by clear and convincing evidence that he is not a flight risk or a danger to the safety of any other person in the community. Velardo said he's convinced the former agent is not a flight risk or danger to the community. Bongiovanni is aware of the identities of all the witnesses who testified against him and the identity of his others who provided information, but may not have been called as witnesses, Trippi said in a court filing. This creates potential for danger. Leaving the defendant at liberty in the community keeps the avenues of communication open for the defendant to continue to spread information about other people, as he has done in the past regarding DEA confidential sources that he learned during the trial, Trippi said. But Bongiovanni's lawyers call that argument the government's final attempt to dirty Mr. Bongiovanni's name by suggesting the vague hypotheticals, none of which can be tied to Mr. Bongiovanni's observed actions by an ever-watchful government over 7 years. The jury in Bongiovanni's 2-month retrial in 2024 convicted him of conspiring to distribute drugs, making a false statement, conspiring to defraud the United States, and obstruction of justice. The jury at the former federal agent's first trial found Bongiovanni guilty on 1 count of obstruction of justice and 1 count of lying to federal agents, both counts involving a case file kept in his home after his retirement. Prosecutors said that during a conspiracy from 2008 through 2019, Bongiovanni misled local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies to keep them from investigating drug traffickers, exposed 3 confidential sources, misused the DEA databases, revealed the traffickers that tractor-trailer loads of marijuana from California and British Columbia were not being tracked, wrote at least 10 false and misleading DEA reports, and made a myriad of false statements to his bosses and federal agents to conceal his role in the conspiracy. Among the issues the defense intends to raise on appeal is the prosecution's Italian organized crime references during Bongiovanni's trials. Velardo's pretrial ruling permitted certain IOC evidence at trial, but McKay argued that the prosecution presented excessive and needless evidence about IOC connections. The prosecution attempted to inflate this into an IOC case, McKay said in court, citing photos the prosecution introduced as evidence of people with alleged organized crime connections, whom he called extremely tangential to the trials. Permitting this form of evidence was unfairly prejudicial because the court permitted the government to introduce evidence with the stamp of approval from law enforcement that IOC actually existed, while at the time precluding the defense from attacking the underlying fact that IOC existed in Buffalo. The defense lawyer said the needless injection of this prejudicial evidence into the trial record deprived Mr. Bongiovanni of a trial constrained to his alleged actions and transformed much of it into a sideshow about history and prevalence of Italian organized crime in western New York. Singer and McKay said it also scared jurors. The government's actions to achieve this were purposeful. The court permitted the government free rein. Prosecutors argued before the trials that their case was about who Bongiovanni protected and why he protected him in violation of his sworn duties, and it was necessary for jurors to understand Bongiovanni's motives. On Thursday, Trippi said the IOC evidence explained a large part of the motive behind the DEA special agent protecting a drug trafficking organization that distributed marijuana cocaine in western New York. Ronald Serio testified at Bongiovanni's trials that he paid the federal agent $2,000 and then $4,000 a month from 2010 to 2017, totaling at least $250,000 in bribes. Bongiovanni has maintained his innocence. Jurors acquitted him of a count that specifically accused him of accepting bribes from the Serio drug organization, and the judge said he would not have found Bongiovanni guilty of bribery himself, which explained why he sentenced Bongiovanni to a prison term far shorter than the 15-year sentence sought by prosecutors. And you're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is now 17 minutes past the hour, and we will move on to our editorials, which got lost.
It's there somewhere.
Yeah. Polishing local gems. Help from the East Side Landmarks, and a new focus on UB bode well for the future. A Buffalo treasure that badly needs an update is about to receive an injection of vitality. New York State plans a $40 million to $45 million transformation of the Broadway market this summer. Boy, I remember that when I was a kid. The intention, as reported by the Buffalo News' Jonathan D. Epstein, is to turn it into a vibrant, year-round food and shopping hub. The comprehensive renovation will include restored architecture features, a reorganized layout, new vendor stalls, and a variety of mechanical and infrastructure improvements. According to Empire State Development President and CEO Hope Knight, our vision has always been a thriving Broadway market for the East Side, and today we're one step closer. This work, as well as breathing new life into a much-loved Buffalo icon, is also meant to stimulate development throughout the Broadway Fillmore neighborhood. The effort is led by Empire State Development Corporation, but under the management of a newly formed nonprofit, Broadway Market Management Incorporated, which will operate the buildings together with the ESD, and the Broadway Market has long deserved this attention. Stay tuned for updates on the extensive renovations. Now I want butter lambs and pierogi.
Oh, yeah. These days leading up to Easter are always a fun time to visit the Broadway market.
I love that place at Easter. We used to
Yeah.
go there when I was a kid. It was a family outing. Well, much has been written about artificial intelligence, and the University at Buffalo's role is drawing some of that attention toward Western New York. As reported by the News of Macklin, the focus will intensify as UB plans to break ground this fall on Empire AI Supercomputer Center at its North Campus. Once online, the facility will be a focal point of New York State's Empire AI initiative. Empire AI is a research consortium of higher education and private research institutions from all around the state, with UB the location of its hub.
This new interest in UB didn't escape the notice of Venu Gonvindaharu, UB Senior Vice President for Research, Innovation, and Economic Development, who was recently on a recruiting trip to India on behalf of the university. Gonvindaraju noted that AI is happening, Empire AI is in New York, and Buffalo is the home. UB's new status as an AI hub should greatly enhance its ability to attract the best and brightest. As noted in the article, competition among U.S. universities for international students has intensified, especially given current federal policies that have the U.S. issuing fewer student visas. Potential international students and top-tier faculty are paying close attention to UB and the state's Empire AI initiative. And under landmark protection, historic structures are gaining better protection from demolitions thanks to new municipal policies and the hard work of preservationists. As reported by Jonathan D. Epstein, the Buffalo Preservation Board is proposing to designate 2 late 19th century commercial buildings on the east side as local landmarks. The Preservation Board has in its sights the landmarking of a pair of 3-story buildings at 654 William Street and 1121 Broadway, which date to 1889 and 1899, respectively. The board has authority under the city code and has a standing subcommittee on landmarking that regularly evaluates properties. Both structures, especially the Romanesque Revival William Street building, located on a corner lot, still exhibit many distinctive features, though there have been alterations over the years. Those interested in the proposals should attend the public hearings on April 2nd. If approved, the application would be recommended to the Common Council for an additional public hearing and formal approval. It's worth delving into Buffalo's rich architectural history. It's even better to speak up before it gets lost.
Amen.
Copy that.
We have some beautiful architecture here that people locally take for granted and nationally gets all kinds of attention.
Yeah.
Well, on to the political cartoons we have from Adam Ziglis. A hand with crossed fingers and a little square next to it with a check mark on it. And on the cuff, it says first place with a Buffalo Sabres insignia under it. And there's a little title that says cross-checking. And the Sabres have been doing unusually well, and we would really like to do even more well.
We'd like to take out the word unusually from there.
Yeah. And from Michael Ramirez from the Creators Syndicate, we have another cartoon with a cartoon that I almost missed this. It looks like a photograph. It's done well, very well. And we have Middle Eastern faces, and in the middle you have a person wearing a t-shirt and the wrists are tied with a globe for a head that's blindfolded, and it says Strait of Hormuz. And the title says The New Iran Hostage Crisis.
Ooh. He can be a clever fellow, that Michael Ramirez.
Sometimes he comes up with some real gems.
Well, turning to the big editorial, this one from Clarence Page of the Tribune Content Agency. Hegseth's crusade putting undue limits on Stars and Stripes. Oh no, Stars and Stripes is under fire again. Controversy is not exactly unknown to the legendary military newspaper. Born under the Civil War, Stars and Stripes has taken all sorts of flack and survived. Impressively, for a publication owned and operated by the U.S. military that nevertheless calls itself an independent voice. As someone who served overseas as a drafted Vietnam-era Army journalist, I can tell you that military journalism is not an oxymoron, or at least it's not supposed to be. But Stripes, as it's commonly called in the service, has a new and imposing critic Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, famous or infamous for his personal crusade against woke culture and its imagined effects on the nation's warfighters, the Trump administration's ideologically loaded term for the people most of us call service members. As Stars and Stripes revealed, the Defense Department issued a modernization plan for the paper with alarming stipulations. It, quoting here, limits the use of wire services, bars, comics, and other syndicated features, and rather ominously requires that content must be consistent with good order and discipline, a phrase borrowed from the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the paper reported. As a fan of Stripes going back to my military days, I immediately wondered what changes Hegseth's culture war might bring. It looks a lot like an attempt to make the paper less interesting to its readers, not to mention less credible as an independent voice of news and analysis.
It's not exactly a surprise coming from Hegseth. This is the same Secretary of Defense, you may recall, who famously shared sensitive information regarding U.S. military strikes on Houthi rebels in Yemen in March of last year over the unsecured commercial messaging app Signal. Included in the chat group was the editor of The Atlantic, who later revealed details he had learned. Hegseth also imposed a pledge on journalists not to gather or transmit information about military affairs that have not been approved by his department for release. Most credible media groups refused to sign this pledge and have been denied Pentagon press credentials. Stars and Stripes is owned by the Defense Department but is run by civilian editors. The paper's staff does include service members who worked under the mentorship of civilian journalists. Congress members of both parties have consistently supported the publication's mission to produce independent journalism consistent with the principles of the First Amendment. The memo says that Stars and Stripes will continue to operate with editorial independence. However, as Stars and Stripes reported, Pentagon Chief Spokesperson Sean Parnell asserted that going forward the paper would be by the warfighter and for the warfighter. Stars and Stripes editor-in-chief Eric Slavin told NPR that the phrase good order and discipline raises concerns that reporters who are in the U.S. military might face court-martial if they were to complete a story that the Defense Department did not like and did not find consistent with good order and discipline. Would they be in legal jeopardy? Slavin asked. We don't know the answer to that. The prospect immediately brings to mind one of the most famous stories in Stars and Stripes history, the clash between Generals George Patton and Dwight D. Eisenhower during World War II over the wildly popular Willie and Joe cartoons of Bill Mauldin. Grimy, mudcake, and weary, Willie and Joe portrayed for the folks back home the thoroughly miserable conditions daily faced by our GIs and managed to squeeze a few chuckles of knowing laughter out of the readers. Patton, a notoriously tough and humorless commander, considered Willie and Joe to be a threat to discipline and morals. Quite the opposite of the way many fans saw the cartoon. Patton threatened to ban Stars and Stripes, but Eisenhower defended the paper as more of a support for morale than a threat. The paper remained independent. Mauldin went on to win 2 Pulitzers and the Army's Legion of Merit. Such disputes are not uncommon with the institution as large and diverse as the U.S. military. In my experience, challenging conventions and presenting a more candid depiction of what troubles over our fighting men and women and their folks back home brings you more credibility and appreciation than trying to spray perfume on the horrors of the battlefield.
A similar story is told about the cartoon G.I. Beetle Bailey. The strip was starting to build an audience in the early 50s when the Tokyo edition of Stars and Stripes banned it out of fear it would encourage service members to adopt Bailey's generally lackadaisical attitude and behavior. A second ban was imposed in 1970 after the introduction of the strip's first black character, Lieutenant Jackson Flapp, whose afro technically was way too voluminous to pass regulation in the real world, a fact that delighted me and many of my fellow black service personnel in the late stages of the Vietnam War era. A free press enables journalists and others to express themselves and react honestly and candidly, which in the long run builds trust and credibility with skeptical audiences. A lot of people understandably question whether we even need newspapers like Stars and Stripes or the one you're reading now in this digital age. But regardless of the medium, what matters is the content. Media provide not only information and entertainment, but also connections of the sort that help people inside the military and their families back home feel less isolated. It's unclear what threat Hegseth perceives in Stars and Stripes as it's currently run, but I suspect he's going to find out that a lot of Americans still believe that a free press is worth defending, even and especially when it serves the people who serve our nation.
And you're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service, and the time now is 29 minutes past the hour, and we will move on to my view, the subject being weather, a subject near and dear to my heart. I took a couple courses of meteorology from the esteemed Stephen Vermette at Buff State. So, winter's many faces exhibited in one day. This is from Jane Mitchell of East Amherst, who imagines if climate were a botanical species. I climbed out of bed, meandered to the glass door that opens the patio of our villa, and opened up the vertical blinds. Snow was really coming down. The temperature outside had dropped to 2 degrees. But the temp of my cabin fever was rising. So out of sheer boredom, I decided to conjure up an imaginary friend from Hawaii and invite her for a visit. She loved to explore what we'll call the different, quote-unquote, species of climates, but had never been off the island. Perfect. I extended a formal invitation and suggested she hop on the next flight, and she responded with excitement. We met at the airport, and when the exit doors opened, she sucked in her breath. "Oh, this is much different than I was expecting," she said, wide-eyed. The next morning, she awoke early, eager to experience species she'd never seen before, so I pulled open the vertical blinds. "What are these?" she asked as we stepped outside. "Most of the different species you'll see of the white variety," I said as an intro. "This one is called the gentle flurry white." One landed on her hand, and just as she was examining it, it melted on her skin. "Where'd it go?" she asked. "They don't like to hang around," I said. "Let's go in for breakfast," and I closed the blinds. A half an hour later, when we finished our coffee, I said, "Are you ready?" "Oh, yes," she said, and I dramatically drew back the blinds, and she gasped as I opened the door. "This one is called the heavy downfall white," I explained as she watched the snow covering her feet. "Unlike the flurry, they like to stay and never leave. Now let's go in for a cup of tea," and again I closed the blinds. "Will there be more to see tomorrow?" she asked. "Tomorrow? Oh, my, no," I said. "There'll be more today." She looked confused, and once again I opened the blinds. "This one's called the transparent glasstail," as we stepped outside and began being pelted by sleet. "I don't like these," she said with a frown. "I know," I said, trying to sound sympathetic. "Let's go back in for a nice lunch," and I closed the blind. After lunch, I again opened the blinds and the door and stepped unexpectedly into 3 feet of snow. "This species is called lake effect white and is indigenous to western New York," I said. "We're all very proud of that." She was clearly overwhelmed, so I brought her back inside and closed the blinds. After dinner, I said, "Are you ready?" She hesitated, but not wanting to offend me, she agreed. This time I opened the blinds, but not the door. "This is as close as we'll want to be. These are called the massive chilling white, and they don't like company." I cautioned as a blizzard rattled the door. We turned in for the night. And she was still processing that, and in the morning I once again pulled open the blinds, this time to full sun. "This species is called blind white," I said. "You'll want your sunglasses." She began quickly packing for home, fearful of what might still be lurking behind those blinds. Bag in tow, she stepped outside into a temperature of 72 degrees. "This is my climate, my species. I love it," she cried. "Hurry," I said. "You don't want to miss your flight." "You really don't." That's been Buffalo lately. You don't like the weather? Wait about 35 seconds.
Something like that.
And that's on a good day.
In another voice, Ken Girardin, a fellow at the Manhattan Institute, says New Yorkers next year will be scratching their heads trying to understand why they're paying the biggest property tax increase in state history after hearing Governor Kathy Hochul talk so much about affordability. That is what's ahead if Hochul caves to pressure from New York's public employee unions, who want the governor to supersize their taxpayer-guaranteed pensions. The state constitution protects pensioners from having their benefits reduced, but it doesn't stop state lawmakers from increasing them, and that's what's being attempted now. The unions want their members to, among other things, be able to retire from their jobs at age 55 and to stop paying anything toward those pensions after 10 years on the job. Albany ended those perks for future retirees, people hired since 2009, because people were living longer and investments weren't delivering the expected returns. Taxpayers had to put considerably more money into the pension systems. In 2000, taxpayers paid $1 billion into the pension plans for state and local workers. By 2010, it had swollen to $10 billion and kept going up. School districts faced the worst of it, and school property taxes ballooned as a direct result. Hochul, serving on the Hamburg Town Board in the early 2000s, experienced some of this too. The town's pension costs exploded, and the board had little choice but to significantly raise taxes on homes and businesses, something that will happen again if this push to sweeten pensions succeeds. The current system, the one the unions insist need to be changed, allows workers to start collecting their full pensions at age 63 and requires them to contribute between 3 and 6% of their pay toward a pension. Taxpayers still guarantee the pensions, meaning they must make up the difference when pension fund investments don't grow fast enough or shrink. Nearly every state lawmaker got elected with public employee union support, so they're reluctant to say anything critical about this effort, which the unions hope to sneak into the state budget Hochul is negotiating now. Unions are demanding changes that would add well over $100 billion to future costs for taxpayers, the equivalent of $20,000 per family. That cost won't hit all at once, but it will immediately push up property taxes. So much for affordability. That's the opinion of Ken Girardin, a fellow at the Manhattan Institute.
We will move on now to Buffalo next. And from Calvin Chan of the Associated Press, here's how AI can and can't help your job hunt. And finding a job feels harder than ever. For many job seekers, it might seem like there's never been a harder time to find a job. Hiring for white-collar jobs has been especially weak, part of what economics call a low-hire, low-fire job market, in which businesses are largely holding on to their workers while hiring remains sluggish, making it difficult for younger workers to land permanent work. Technology is also shaking up the hiring process. Automated systems enable job seekers to easily apply to more jobs, but those same systems also make it even tougher to get noticed. According to data from hiring platform Greenhouse, the average recruiter has 3.5 times more job applications to sift through than they did a few years ago. But artificial intelligence has offered job seekers new ways to stand out, such as improving resumes or helping out with interview prep. Here's advice from experts on how to use technology to your benefit. Let AI update your resume. An updated resume is one of the basic tenets of a job search. AI is a great tool for revamping CVs and cover letters, but experts warn that everyone else also has realized this. AI absolutely does risk reducing your job application materials to the same style as every other applicant's, said Daniel Zhao, chief economics at online research and recruitment site Glassdoor. As a hiring manager, this is something I have seen myself on application materials that have clearly been customized using AI. For job seekers, that makes it hard for your application to stand out from your peers. Instead, take it a step further by using AI to personalize your approach for the companies you're most interested, recommends Daniel Chait, CEO of recruitment firm Greenhouse. You could, for example, get AI to read all your company's reports for the past year or analyze job openings to help you improve your cover letter or the wording of your resume in very specific ways, he said. And a lot of people think there are secret tricks for getting a resume past the automated system that screens applications. One long-held belief is that you can add in keywords in white text, which a human won't see, but a computer will. But the latest systems have long since moved on from that practice, said Chait. There's no secret keyword you can put in, and that's just wasting your time. Don't bother doing that. And then you shouldn't rely on your resume to land a job. A resume is still an important part of the job search process, but it is not sufficient. You need far more than your resume, said Pat Whalen, a product manager at LinkedIn. With the rise of AI seeping into many parts of work life, Whalen said job seekers should show off any AI skills they have. So,
Well, from the Associated Press, Melina Walling tells us that the EPA is okaying ethanol fuel in a bid to lower prices. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency said it would temporarily allow widespread sales of a higher ethanol gas blend in a move that they hope will tamp down consumer prices that have soared since the Iran war began. The higher blend has been prohibited in warm weather because of concerns it could worsen smog. The summer waiver for E15 has become commonplace in recent years, and both Republicans and Democrats have called for it to become year-round and permanent to lower prices at the pump. It's already allowed in some states. Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota, Nebraska, Missouri, Wisconsin, and most of South Dakota, according to the Renewable Fuels Association, an ethanol trade group. The association said it's also legal in cities that require reformulated gasoline or gasoline blended with the intent to burn more cleanly. But not all are convinced the move will substantially lower gas prices. E15 isn't available in all states, and some places don't have the necessary infrastructure or enough of a supply of ethanol to ramp up use, said Kenneth Gillingham, a professor at the Yale School of the Environment, who studies the impacts of transportation regulations on prices, emissions, and consumer welfare. Gillingham also says the higher levels of corrosive ethanol in E15 can be a risk especially to older cars, boats, and all-terrain vehicles. More corn used for ethanol also means less can be used for animal feed, said Jason Hill, a professor at the University of Minnesota who studies food, energy markets, and environmental consequences. That means consumers could be trading lower costs at the pump for higher costs at the grocery store. I think it's difficult to see when the ledger's settled how this is a benefit for U.S. consumers, Hill said. Hill said he thought the announcement was targeted more at farmers hit hard by higher prices for the diesel they use to run their equipment and by fertilizer price hikes caused by the Iran war. He said similar announcements have been made before as a way to express support for agriculture and those who drive. The oil industry has generally opposed expansion of E15, arguing that biofuel blending is costly and raises gasoline prices. But a vice president at the American Petroleum Institute wrote in a statement that they supported this move. By temporarily easing summer fuel requirements, this action helps ensure American consumers continue to have access to affordable, reliable energy, Will Helpman said.
I see that promised sunshine is trying to shine. As a part of our newspaper reading, we present the day's death listings, and if you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. We only have a couple people here. Chodkowski Kathleen M. Nee Pavarski, age 71. Koska Eleanor Nee Pshibulak, and Saur Richard. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. Again, 716-821-5555.
Well, turning, as we always do after the death listings, the Royal Stars, a column from George Nichols. Happy birthday for Friday, March 27th, 2026. You appear laid back, but you're determined, incisive, and fired by social ideals. You are intellectually curious. This is a year of work and construction to create solid foundations. Simplicities will be key. For Aries folks, this is a good day for you, especially if you work in the arts, the entertainment world, sports, or education. Tonight, have fun. Taurus, play things low-key today because you are best served by working alone or behind the scenes. You might prefer to relax at home. Tonight, relax at home. Gemini, this is an energetic, fast-paced day. Not me. It's also a popular day. You might be involved more than usual with creative, artistic people. In fact, a friendship could turn romantic. I hope my wife doesn't find out about that. Tonight, interesting conversations. Sorry, I got to keep this personal stuff out.
That was pretty funny, though.
Cancer, keep in mind that you make a great impression on others right now because the sun is symbolically casting you in a flattering spotlight. Tonight, maintain your possessions. For Leo, today the moon is in your sign, which does two things. It can make you more emotional than usual. However, it can also slightly increase your good luck. Tonight, you win. Virgo, with fiery Mars opposite your sign now, along with Mercury retrograde, you might find your closest relationships to be a tad challenging. Tonight, enjoy privacy. Libra, remember that you need more sleep right now because the sun, your source of energy, is as far away from your sign as it can get all year. Tonight, be friendly. Scorpio, you're high vis today, which means that some people know personal details about your private life. Tonight, you're admired. Sagittarius, do something different today. Break free of your routine. Go someplace different. If you can travel, great. Tonight, do something different. Capricorn, home, family, and your private life are your main focus now. Discussions about shared property, taxes, or debt might come up. Tonight, check your finances. For Aquarius, be prepared to accommodate others today. The reason you have to do this is because the moon is opposite your sign, and that's how it works. Tonight, cooperate. And finally, Pisces, do your best to stay on track because with Mercury retrograde in your sign, mistakes, delays, and equipment breakdowns are likely. Tonight, work. Well, I know what I'm doing tonight. We're having a service at Blessed Trinity Church on Leroy Avenue on the east side, a service of Tenebrae, a bunch of songs and hymns of the current season leading up to Easter. It's going to be a beautiful service. We're singing all a cappella stuff.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, including a few pieces that have accompaniment we're going to do without them. And yeah, it's
A
going to be
cappella. I was a singer in a choir, and that's difficult but gorgeous if it's right.
Oh, yeah. Well, this will be right. It's 7 o'clock, 317 Leroy Avenue. If you don't have anything better to do, you'd be hard-pressed to find something better than this. Well, today in history, on this date, in 1794, Congress approved the act to provide an naval armament of 6 armed ships, which provided the foundation of the permanent U.S. Navy. In 1912, in Washington, D.C., First Lady Helen Herron Taft and the wife of Japan's ambassador to the United States, Viscount Chinda, those two planted the first 2 of 3,000 cherry trees given to the U.S. as a gift by the mayor of Tokyo. In 1964, Alaska was hit by a magnitude 9.2 earthquake, still the strongest on record in North America, and tsunamis together between the earthquake and the tsunamis claimed over 130 lives. In 1968, Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin, the first man to orbit the Earth in 1961, died when his MiG-15 jet crashed during a routine training flight near Moscow. In 1973, The Godfather won the Academy Award for Best Picture of 1972.
Oh, dear.
But its star, Marlon Brando, refused to accept his Oscar for Best Actor and sent in his place actor and activist Sacheen Littlefeather, who spoke out about the depiction of Native Americans in Hollywood. Fascinating. In 1975, construction began on the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. The 800-mile pipeline was completed just over 200 years later. Two years later. In 1977, in aviation's deadliest disaster, 583 people were killed when a KLM Boeing 747 attempting to take off in heavy fog crashed into a Pan Am 747 on an airport runway on the Canary Island of Tenerife.
My goodness.
583 people.
I saw about 5 minutes of The Godfather, and it was, for me, was nightmare enough. Oh my gosh. That was terrible. Well, I kind of reversed a couple of stories here, but I'm going back to the correct one. Seafood industry is betting on fish that looks like meat. Now, this is from J.M. Hirsch of the Associated Press. Well, that's interesting. The future of fish is looking a lot like salami and meatballs and fried chicken and breakfast sausage and, of course, spare ribs and burgers. This is America, after all. Welcome to the era of surreptitious seafood, an industry gamble that overcoming Americans' relative disinterest in the meat of the sea is all a matter of making fish look and taste, well, like fish. Our Taiwanese magic is making tuna taste like fried chicken, said Jack Chi, a spokesman for Tuna Fresh, a Taiwan-based company that sells tuna as fried nuggets and breaded chicken tender like strips. We wanted to be able to engage the U.S. market, and we found that fried foods are the way. Cheese Company was one of hundreds showcasing their products at the recent Seafood Expo North America in Boston. And among the sea of smoked salmons, scallops, and all manner of crustaceans, one trend stood out. The seafood being pitched to the American market is looking less and less like seafood. It's been a big trend for the last couple of years, said Justin Rogers, a sales manager with SK Food Brands in Los Angeles. Among his company's recent offerings, shrimp burgers, both slider size and Whopper worthy. It makes it more palatable to people who aren't big seafood fans, especially with things like these sliders. It gives them an entry point. Americans have a notoriously limited appetite for seafood, and consuming just about 19 pounds a year, a number that's been budged only a little bit in a century. Most of it is shrimp and salmon. The global average is 45 pounds, while some European countries clock in at closer to 90 pounds. Iceland leads everyone with around 200 pounds per year.
That's a half a pound, more than a half a pound per day.
That's a lot of fish. Disguising seafood to appeal to Americans isn't entirely new. After all, frozen fish sticks and McDonald's Filet-O-Fish hardly scream catch of the day. But many of the new products are an entirely different species, or rather, trying to be. It looks like a Slim Jim by design, Harbor Bell Seafood spokeswoman Holly Phillips said of the Seattle company's salmon snack strips, available in smoked, lemon pepper, mango, and curiously, original. It doesn't smell fishy. It doesn't taste fishy. If an original salmon snack stick doesn't taste fishy, what does it taste like after all? Or after a couple of chewy bites, let's go with Slim Jim adjacent and move on. Not everybody thinks covert crustaceans are a good thing. Eat fish that looks like fish, said Niaz Dory. I'm with him. Coordinating Director of North American Marine Alliance, an advocacy group for sustainable seafood practices. The likelihood that fish came from a community-based, scale-appropriate entity is much higher if that fish still looks like what it was when it was swimming in the water. Factory scale and fake are the two F words I tell everybody to avoid. Okay. The pivot to stealthy seafood comes at a critical time for the industry. The only real growth in sales has come from the sushi counter, looking at you, Generation Z, and price hikes not exactly helping the cause. The $24 billion market otherwise has been flat for years, with just 10% of shoppers accounting for nearly half of sales. Seafood apparently isn't an all-in sort of thing. I don't know.
Well, interesting sidelight to that story. It seems to me the colonization of North America by the Europeans was spurred partly by the discovery that there was a lot of seafood available in the western part of the North Atlantic. Yeah. And they saw this as a market for obtaining fish that, for a lot of Catholics at the time, it wasn't just during Lent that they abstained from meat on Fridays. It was year-round back then, and indeed well into the years of my youth. So that led partly to the colonization of North America. Some interesting meal at a local restaurant the other day. Prawns, not my favorite thing. They're, in fact, one of my least favorite. I like seafood well enough, but
I like certain ones.
Yeah, certain ones. And there's I won't mention the restaurant. One of those chain restaurants that features fish sandwiches, and the theme is. The plural of fish is fish. And you can now obtain 2 Filet-O-Fish sandwich for $7. I thought that was clever. We have a column here about the Fairbanks closing. This is from Francesca Bond. I'm trying to stay with
Okay.
with the theme for this half hour.
Restaurants, yeah.
Yeah, and well, we didn't have much to read on the death listings page, so
Yeah.
this is a beautiful building in Lewiston. A Frontier House was its original name.
Yes.
It was an ambitious restaurant for the 9 months it was open. We're talking about Fairbanks here. Opened in late June after 2 years and about $1 million worth of planning and renovating. Monday, the restaurant announced on social media that it's taking a hiatus to reevaluate. We hope to come back stronger and better than ever, said owner Jake Strasser in a text message. Fairbanks came from the team behind Allentown's Billy Club, a restaurant on Allen Street. The group spent a couple of years renovating one of Lewiston's most prominent buildings, the 200-year-old former Hotel Frontier House, which is in the heart of the village. It's considered the village's crown jewel. Fairbanks was its thrilling reintroduction to society after a couple of decades of decay. Strasser and co-owner Daniel Hagen renovated the first floor to become a candlelit restaurant of artful, locally sourced food. Local artists made its wooden furniture, millwork, and decor. They hired an executive chef with Michelin star restaurant experience. He grew some of the ingredients himself at his Clarence home. An in-house sommelier picked wine from small vineyards across the globe. Some of the staff shadowed the team at restaurant Pearl Morissette, not far across the Canadian border, which has 2 Michelin stars and is ranked as Canada's best restaurant. Lots of luck if you want to go to that restaurant, Pearl Morissette. You have to get on the website when they're starting to take reservations for the next couple of months, and if you're lucky and you're in the first 10 minutes of responses, you might get a spot. Well, this place, Fairbanks, the architecture was not the only crown jewel of Fairbanks. It brought something special to Niagara County, but it couldn't survive in the current restaurant landscape where factors keep stacking up against restaurants' favor. Inflating ingredient costs, cash-strapped consumers, and shrinking drinking habits, to name a few. I'm sure no one finds it a surprise that the past year has been incredibly different for restaurants of every kind. When we first embarked on this project, it was 2023. The landscape of the industry was completely different, and our goals were lofty, to say the least, wrote Fairbanks in his closing statement. The restaurant wrote that its long road to opening faced obstacles and setbacks. Now the restaurant closed to reevaluate and hopefully come back stronger than ever. That's quoting Mr. Strasser from his announcement on social media. Strasser said the restaurant has received a generous outpouring of support since its closing announcement. We can say wholeheartedly it is our goal to reopen those doors and continue serving you the best way we know possible, Fairbanks said. Well, I hope that works out, because
That would be good.
a wonderful building. It was home for McDonald's for a while, but that's no longer the case. Well, you're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for today, March 27th, 2026, on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
J.J. Patek
and Don Williams.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We're back. We'll continue now with readings of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
J.J. Patek.
and Don Williams. Turning to the local news from the city and region, leaders of Upstate Transit ask state for 15% aid hike. Representatives of Upstate Transit Systems on Wednesday asked state leaders for a 15% increase in operating aid in the state budget, calling the $75.8 million request critical for affordability, jobs, and the future of their service. If enacted into the final budget, which is due April 1st but widely expected to be late, the increase would lead to a total of $1.09 billion in state aid, according to the New York Public Transit Association, which represents more than 100 transit systems. I didn't know there were that many. Without adequate funding, we cannot maintain current service levels, let alone expand and improve service to meet growing community demand. Michael Velasquez, president of the NYPTA, told reporters in a state capitol news conference, "This level of investment is not optional. It is essential to stabilize our systems today and position us for the future." Velasquez, chief executive officer of the Rochester-Genesee Regional Transportation Authority, was joined by executives from transit systems in Syracuse and Albany. No officials from the Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority, which Velasquez's association represents, were present, nor did the news conference include any of the 19 state lawmakers who represent the state's 8 most western counties. Velasquez, whose transit authority includes service in Genesee, Orleans, and Wyoming counties, said all of the systems across upstate have structural budget deficits. Without the 15% increase in standard operating aid, he said, the deficits will not be met. We are all seeing the same basic level of challenges, he said. Velasquez said more than half of the transit authority's customers in Rochester earn less than $25,000 a year, and nearly 70% live in households without access to a vehicle. The NYPTA said in a news release that for every dollar invested in public transportation, $4 gets generated in economic returns. It said a person could save up to $9,900 a year on average choosing public transportation over driving. Both houses of the state legislature recently proposed additions to Governor Kathy Hochul's $263 billion executive budget. Her budget proposed a 5.8% increase, while the Assembly's recent budget plan called for a 7.45% hike. The Senate's budget plan included the 15% increase. Assemblymember William Magnarelli, a Democrat from Syracuse, and Senator Jeremy Cooney, a Democrat from Rochester, who chair the transportation committees in their respective houses, enthusiastically called for the 15% increase on Tuesday, as did Assemblymember Patricia Fay, the Democrat from Albany, who said the 15% would be $75 million. Fay said she learned from Frank Anacaro, the new chief executive officer of the Capital District Transportation Authority that covers the Albany area. Without the 15% increase, the authority would have to continue cuts. She said some restaurant workers in her district lost their jobs because cuts led to the end of their transit service. This funding has a direct impact on workers, on families, on students, she said. Cooney seized upon Hochul's focus on affordability as the governor, a Democrat, faces re-election against Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman, a Republican. Cooney noted that the prices of gas and cars are on the rise. Cooney called public transit a great equalizer to help people reach jobs, school, health care, and other areas. Affordability and public transit go hand in hand, he said. For Rochester and the Capital District in central New York, and in Buffalo and western New York, we know that people depend on public transit just as much as they depend on public transit in New York City. Sean Butler, a spokesperson for the governor, said transit was vital to communities across the state. The governor will continue to negotiate in good faith with the legislature to pass a budget that supports public transportation options across the state, he said. Wow.
I personally, if I have to go downtown, I prefer to grab the bus because picking a parking spot downtown's a joke.
You and me both.
And nobody's laughing. A woman admits role in sex extortion plot. This is from Patrick LeCamp. A woman facing 14 federal charges admitted her role in what prosecutors describe as an extortion plot that exploited an underage girl and victimized people intending to pay for sexual encounters. Christina Eves, 24, pleaded guilty Wednesday in U.S. District Court to conspiracy to commit extortion. She was among 9 defendants named in a 29-count indictment in October, and her charges included robbery, extortion, and conspiracy to sex traffic a minor. Eve's guilty plea to the extortion conspiracy count averted a federal trial, and her other charges will be dismissed. In her plea agreement, Eves acknowledged her role in the setting of extortion. For extortion, the men who arrived at hotel rooms in Buffalo suburbs in 2024 on the promise of sex with a woman for a price. Sometimes their encounters started with Eves undressing them and giving them a back or chest rubs. At other times, an underage girl did so. Unbeknownst to the men, Lawrence Colbert was in the room hiding in a closet and recording the encounters with a phone camera. Prosecutors say Colbert would jump out and tell the naked customer, "You're on video with a minor." Colbert threatened to report the customer to police or post the video online unless he paid him money. Assistant U.S. Attorney Casey Chalbeck said during Wednesday's court proceedings. Prosecutors have called Colbert, 28, of Buffalo, the head of the conspiracy. He faces 24 counts like most of any defendant, including conspiracy to sex traffic 2 minors and coerce and entice one of them. Colbert, who has pleaded not guilty, remains in custody as his court case proceeds. Eves was released on bail after her arrest in October and has been living with family in Mississippi. Defense attorney Daniel J. Dubois said she now works at 2 jobs and is enrolled in college classes, describing her as flourishing since leaving Western New York. Dubois said in court that Eves' life was in turmoil and under control of Mr. Colbert when she engaged in the extortion scheme in 2024. U.S. District Judge John L. Sinatra allowed Eves to remain out of custody until her September 22nd sentencing. Federal sentencing guidelines suggest 41 to 51 months in prison for Eves, according to the plea agreement. The government's evidence includes video from Colbert's cell phone showing Eves massaging the customers, text messages between Colbert and Eves, and photos of Eves with the underage girl, Chalbeck said. The federal grand jury indictment lists the abbreviations of 11 alleged victims of extortion or attempted extortion and 2 alleged robbery victims, but the conspiracy charges are not limited to them. At Colbert's detention hearing in November, Chalbeck said the government has 113 videos. Eves became the second defendant to plead guilty. Last month, Victoria Mitchell, 28, of Buffalo, admitted to a narcotics conspiracy and avoided going to trial on sex trafficking conspiracy count. Prosecutors say co-conspirators have various roles, including posting sexually provocative images and advertisements on commercial sex websites, telling customers what hotel room to go to, undressing the sex customers, filming the customers attempting to have sex, bursting into the room to confront the customers, threatening to post a video online or provide it to the police, and then offering to delete the video if the customer paid them. Good grief. Well, bad grief.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, Mike Petro reports that if you're planning to attend the Buffalo Bison season opener this afternoon, bundle up. Forecast is calling for partly sunny skies and no rain, but mid-30-degree temperatures around the 105 game time at Salem Field. That's one cold baseball game to sit through, but fans in attendance for the Bisons against the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Rail Riders will likely be rewarded for coming out to the ballpark. The team made a 50-degree guarantee. They do that at opener every year. 50-degree guarantee that will give all fans in attendance a free ticket to a future Bisons game, redeemable through May 31st, if the temperature fails to reach the 50 degrees at first pitch. For the 3rd straight season, the Bisons will open with the earliest home game in their franchise history. With the 105 first pitch this afternoon, the team's home opener will actually be the first regular season game played in minor league baseball this season. The Bisons are looking to get fans in the seats for the season, which includes 75 home games, even if it costs them free tickets to a future game. More than 8,000 fans attended last season's home opener, and the team expects a similar turnout for today's game despite the cold weather. Last season, the Bisons made the same 50-degree guarantee for opening day on March 28th and hit it during a 6-2 victory over Rochester. We like to have a lot of fun with that, said Brad Bisbing, a assistant general manager for the Bisons, the AAA affiliate of the of the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm having a tough time this morning. There might be a little extra bundling up for opening day, but we're more than happy to reward our great fans that are here on opening day with a chance to catch a Bisons game a little later in the season when it's a little warmer, he added. By the 31st of May, it better be a lot warmer than this. It's been a really cold winter leading up to the start of spring this month, so preparing the field and the stadium for the season opener have been a challenge. Jeff Smolka, the team's head groundskeeper, and Brian Phillips, director of stadium operations, have not had a lot of time to do it, but this week's milder temperatures have helped their efforts, Bisbing said. The Bisons usually offer extra discounts and promotions to get fans to games early in the season, knowing it will likely be cold in Buffalo in the early spring. Among several value deals for fans, the Bisons are offering a season starter pack that includes a ticket to each of the first 15 home games for just $4 apiece, a savings of 83% off face value. Additionally, 15 home games in March and April have been dubbed Kids Month, with tickets for fans ages 14 and under just $10 at the Salem Field box office only. I remember when I was a kid going to school in the public schools in Buffalo, we closed school at noon on the day of the Bisons' home opener.
Yes, we did.
Those were the good old days. The Bisons will have a 2026 magnetic schedule giveaway for the first 4,000 fans to enter the stadium at the Swan Street Gate, and a ceremonial first pitch from Buffalo Bills linebacker and Lancaster native Joe Andreessen. A pregame resurgence brewing happy hour will be held at the new Fatty's Craft Beer Corner with $4 craft beers from noon till game time. Gates for the general public will open at noon, and on-field ceremonies are scheduled to begin around 12:35 p.m. There's always a great deal of excitement for opening day because of how great the festivities are, being back in the ballpark after a long winter and finally being able to say hello to spring. And on top of that, being able to start all the great events for the season ahead at the ballpark, both during Bison's games and the non-baseball schedule as well, Bisbing said. The opening series of the 141st season, you hear that, of professional baseball in Buffalo continues at Salem Field with two more 105 games on Saturday and Sunday against Scranton, the New York Yankees AAA affiliate. For both games, fans 14 and younger can get a $10 game ticket with an adult ticket purchase at the ballpark box office. The first 1,000 kids who enter through the Swan Street Gate will also receive a voucher for a free hot dog, soda, and cotton candy. A pregame mascot meet and greet will be held before both games. And on Sunday, kids can run the bases after the game. There will also be lucky seat ticket giveaways for the WYRK-FM Town Auto Taste of Country concert featuring Luke Bryan on June 26th. Among the other popular non-Bisons events this season at the ballpark will be the Cosmic Baseball Tour glow-in-the-dark Barnstormer games at July 3rd and 4th. The first night is already a sellout.
Glow in the dark?
Yeah, well,
I'm not sure what that is, but it sounds interesting.
the Bison's mascot, Buster Bison, he used to be a year or two. One of my former students was the guy inside the costume for
Was he?
for Buster Bison. He came by one day. I was at the game. He came by and said, "Hey, Mr. Williams, how you doing?" I said, "Hey, Frank." "Don't call me Frank. It's Buster."
It's Buster. On another note from Jay Tokaz, concert will feature a Holocaust-era violin. A cantata written 50 years ago by a Buffalo poet and composer with a vintage violin played during the Holocaust are among the unique elements of a special concert set for Sunday inside Buffalo's Temple Beth Zion Sanctuary as part of this season of Jewish remembrance. Gloria Titevsky originally wrote Valley of Silence, the search for 6 million, both words and music for piano in the 1970s as a response to the cruelty and inhumanity of the Holocaust. The cantata will get its world premiere following a new arrangement and orchestration by Moshe Shulman, a Buffalo musician. The concert will feature a 22-piece orchestra, including Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra violinist Antoine Lefebvre and oboist Ann Maddox, as well as vocal performances by 3 cantors: Susan Lewis, Friedman of Temple Beth Zion, Mark Horvitz of the Jewish Community Center, and Stephen Storer of the Congregation Beth Shalom near Chicago. Lefebvre will be performing on a violin that features a Jewish Star of David engraved on its backside and was played in Europe during the Holocaust. Little is known about the origin and history of the violin, other than it was brought to the United States by a Romani musician who fled Europe. Romani are a nomadic ethnic group in Europe who were also persecuted by the Nazis. Storer, whose father was a Holocaust survivor, purchased the violin in 2023 from the grandson of the man who brought it to the U.S. Storer said he then had the violin authenticated by Avshi Weinstein, a violin maker who helped found Violins of Hope, a traveling collection of Holocaust-era violins played in concerts around the world. Storer was a mentor to Friedman, who was already a cantor in the Reform tradition when she trained to be accredited, as well as in the conservative movement of Judaism. The violin has been played in recent years at Holocaust remembrance events in and around Chicago. He said, "It is a touch of history that is rare and allows people to not just see through the piece of glass, but to be able to hear it and touch it," said Storer. It is not like meeting a survivor of the Holocaust, a human being, he said, but it has an inkling, a splinter of that same ominous experience. Yom HaShoah, also called Holocaust Remembrance Day, is April 13th. Passover starts April 1st. The concert, part of the Stained Glass Concert Series at Temple Beth Zion, is at 3 p.m. Sunday in the synagogue at 805 Delaware Avenue. The series operates on a pay-as-you-wish basis. Suggested admission is $18 per person or $36 per family.
Sounds like a wonderful opportunity.
Yes, it
If
does.
you're of two minds and can't decide which way to go, Mark Horowitz of the Jewish Community Center is one of the vocalists performing. He's worth hearing. Well, you're listening to a reading of articles from today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service at 17 minutes past the hour. It's time to turn to the sports pages.
So,
Rachel Lindsay reports that Rasmus Dahlin liked what he saw out of the Buffalo Sabres in the third period of a 4-3 overtime loss to the Boston Bruins. But the Sabres captain made it clear those few minutes of extra effort weren't enough. At this point in the season, the Sabres need a full 60 minutes of competitive, consistent hockey to complete the chase for a berth in the Stanley Cup playoffs and prepare for the postseason. That was absent in the first 2 periods of the loss to the Bruins. "This is a learning game for us," Dahlin said. "We have to really go through what happened. We can't play this way for 2 periods today. We lost too many battles. We weren't skating out there. We made it way too easy for them to play against us. That's not how we should play." Pavel Zacha's goal 38 seconds into overtime helped the Bruins rally for the win, and Zacha's game winner negated the Sabres' efforts in a game in which Jason Zucker scored a pair of power play goals. His second goal, less than 6 minutes into the third period, gave the Sabres a 3-2 lead and followed Zach Benson's goal, which tied the game at 2-2 at 5:21 of the third. "That's how we should play the whole game," Dahlin said of the third period. "We came out way better in the third. We started keeping it simple, started winning battles. We started to play our game." The Bruins, though, stormed back with 6 minutes left in regulation as Casey Middlestad picked up a shot that bounced off the glass behind goalie Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen and caught the goalie out of position to tie the game on a shot from directly in front of the crease. Then Zacha ended the game in overtime on a pass from David Pastrnak. 1 goal, 2 assists, who deked Ryan McLeod as he entered the zone, then threaded the puck past an outstretched Alex Tuch to Zacha, who beat Luukkonen on a wrist shot from the left circle. The Sabres earned a point by going to overtime against the Bruins and began yesterday tied with Carolina, idle on Wednesday for first in the Eastern Conference, each with 96 points. But the Sabres lamented, knowing that they put in only 20 minutes of true work, which wasn't going to cut it in a 60-minute game, and one that may have been a preview of a first-round matchup in the Stanley Cup playoffs. puck decisions, Sabres coach Lindy Ruff said, weren't good against a team that's fighting to earn a playoff berth. The Bruins entered the game in the first wildcard spot in the Eastern Conference and played with more urgency than the Sabres. The Bruins outshot the Sabres 24-19 in the first two periods and took a 2-1 lead at 9:45 of the second on Victor Arvidsson's goal, which suddenly created the same sense of urgency for the Sabres. We went back to simple, Ruff said. We went back to working harder. Those first two periods are probably our poorest periods of the last 3 months. Connor Timmins played his first game since December 18th when he sustained a broken leg in the late minutes of a 5-3 loss against Philadelphia at KeyBank Center. But, as Ruff said, it was as if Timmins hadn't missed a beat despite missing 38 games. We gave him a little extra time, Ruff said of Timmins. He thought he skated well. Every puck decision he made, I thought, was real good. Got the puck down the ice, penalty killing, made the right play, got pucks out of the zone. Timmins played on the Sabres' third defensive pairing with Logan Stanley, replacing Zach Metza. Timmins had 15 minutes, 30 seconds of ice time against the Bruins, including 2:17 of shorthanded ice time, put 2 shots on goal, had 2 hits, and blocked 2 shots. Rock solid, Ruff said of Timmins' return to the penalty kill, which was 2 for 2 against Boston after finishing 1 for 4 Sunday against Anaheim. And our penalty killing has been hurting now for a little bit. Dahlin's fiancée, Carolina Matovac, was in the building Wednesday, her first trip to Buffalo since she underwent a heart transplant last summer in France. Dahlin has taken 2 separate leaves of absence to return to Sweden to be with Matovac and their families. She has been recovering in Europe since she underwent the transplant and recently traveled to the United States. She was introduced on the KeyBank Center Jumbotron during the first period. Unbelievable, Dahlin said of KeyBank Center's welcome for Matovac. That support we've had for a long time, and she getting this today, it was special for sure. Matovac's arrival in the United States, Dahlin said, was a recent development. He explained that she had to go through a lot of medical testing before traveling. One of the Buffalo Sabres forwards was out of action for practice yesterday at KeyBank Center. The Sabres confirmed that Noah Ostlund, a forward, didn't practice with the team due to an upper body injury, which he sustained in that 4-3 overtime loss against Boston. There was no immediate prognosis as to how long Ostlund could be out of or return to the lineup as it was being evaluated yesterday. Ostlund, a rookie from Stockholm, Sweden, has 11 goals with 16 assists and is plus 11 with 30 blocked shots in 60 games with the Sabres. He had 14 minutes, 31 seconds of ice time over 19 shifts Wednesday against the Bruins.
Yeah. And from Mike Harrington, feed the pipeline. Buffalo Bison's, do I have the correct story? Yes. The Buffalo Bison's 2025 season was a flop in the standings at 61-85, the team's worst record since 2009. But as shoddy looking as that mark might have been, the Herd's success wasn't having players prepare to contribute in Toronto. Big league standouts like Max Scherzer, George Springer, Shane Bieber, and Dalton Varsho all prepped in Buffalo on injury rehab stints. Utility man Addison Barger and starter Eric Lauder opened the season in Buffalo, and outfielder Davis Snyder came back in June to work on his swing, with all becoming big contributors to the World Series. And one of the stories in the season across the sport was the ascension of pitcher Trey DeSavage, who went on through all 4 levels of the Toronto chain and got called up to the big leagues in September after a stint with the Herd and was a key starter in all 3 rounds of the postseason. Last year was very indicative of the kind of organization that we have, the 6th-year Buffalo manager Casey Condaly said this week in the advance of the season opener Friday at 1:05 p.m. against Scranton Wilkes-Barre at Salem Field. They're looking at not necessarily only guys on the 40-man roster or guys that have been projected to be major league players that are going to help. A variety of different players that went up. Some made their debuts and some maybe thought, wow, I didn't even know who this guy was. And they're helping the team win and get to the World Series. It opened a lot of eyes in the organization for players where they now can believe that, hey, if I go and do what I need to do and I'm successful and I get my work done and I get better, there is an opportunity for me. Opening day starter Grant Rogers, a 6'7" right-hander who won 11 games at 2 levels last year, will make his AAA debut when he takes the ball Friday and concurs with that assessment. Wow, 6'7". He's a big boy. It's really encouraging, said Rogers, a Texan who is a former Southland Pitcher of the Year at McNeese State. The Savage started out in low last year, and he played in low A last year, and he played at every single level. I thought that was incredible. He's a really good guy, really good friend of mine. If that doesn't tell you something, there's opportunities there, and they'll show up when you least expect them, so I'll be ready. Rogers has 115 strikeouts and 150 and a third innings last year for Class A Vancouver and AA New Hampshire while winning 11 games between the two teams. He said he's stoked to get a chance to throw at Salem Field. I was shell-shocked. Staying in the outfield, there's a bunch of skyscrapers, you said, of downtown Buffalo. You don't see that in AA. There's just a beautiful hotel in the outfield of New Hampshire, and it's really nice, and I love the field. This place is unbelievable. So I'm ready for this season to start. Jay Savage, by the way, is one of the several pitchers who may need rehab time in Buffalo after starting the season on the injured list with shoulder issues. Bieber could be in the same boat, and a former first-round pick Ricky Tiedemann is closing in return from Tommy John surgery that has kept him out since late in 2024 season. And from some familiar faces, there are only 4 infielders on the 2026 roster who have seen substantial time here in the last couple of years in Riley Tirada, Rafael Lantigua, Josh Rivera, and Josh Kasevich. Tirada, a cornerman, earned the club's most valuable player last year by batting .269 with 12 home runs and 60 RBIs in 140 games. Lantigua, back for a second stint in the Toronto chain, was in the Bison's 2023 most inspirational player after batting .305 with 12 homers and 85 RBIs. The Blue Jays are also high on the Buffalo outfield prospects R.J. Schreck and Yohendrick Pinango, and Fleet outfielder Jonathan Clace split time last season between Buffalo and Toronto. Herd catcher Brandon Valenzuela, who finished here last season after a trade from San Diego, impressed as a depth option for the Jays in spring training. And from the Big Bat League, the Blue Jays are going to be closely watching outfielder D.H. Elroy Jimenez to see if he can return to the form that landed him fourth in the 2019 Rookie of the Year voting after a 31-homer season for the Chicago White Sox. Jimenez, who played 6 games with Buffalo at the tail end of last year, has played in 534 Major League Baseball games. In addition to his big rookie campaign, the 29-year-old was named a Silver Slugger following the 2020 COVID-shortened season in Chicago. At .296 and 14 and 41 in 55 games. He's been a pleasure for all the players around him, for all the staff around him, and he's done nothing but be concerned about getting himself better, good enough to go back to the major levels and contribute, Condaly said. He swung the bat really well. It is great to have players like that around that could help younger players. And the schedule. Opening day is part of a 3-game series that begins the Bison's 150-game schedule as the Herd and the Rail Riders also meet Saturday and Sunday at 1 p.m. Most series during the season are 6-game sets. This year's home opponents are Scranton with the Yankees, Syracuse with the Mets, and Columbus with Cleveland, Worcester with Boston, and Rochester with Washington, Lehigh Valley with Philadelphia, and Charlotte with the White Sox, and Norfolk, Baltimore. On the road, Buffalo faces Scranton, Syracuse, Worcester, and Lehigh Valley, Rochester, and Charlotte, as well as Omaha, which is Kansas City, Iowa, the Cubs, and St. Paul, Minnesota.
They list the location of most of the teams that their minor league teams are affiliated with. They mention a few team names, and that's because, well, Chicago, for example, has 2 teams, so they mention the Cubs rather than just say Chicago. Whatever. I guess you're supposed to know where those teams play.
Yeah.
The 534 games played by Eloy Jimenez gets mentioned here, and it kind of highlights the fact that The Bison's real main reason, most important reason for existence, is to act as a farm team for in their case, the Toronto Major League team. So if they don't do well, it's too bad, but that's really not their main purpose. We hope they can do well and also help the Blue Jays at the same time. Meanwhile, turning to high school sports,
Clevis Murray.
the target on Pioneer's back couldn't be any larger, but the arm leading the flag football team is as steady as ever. Pioneer opened its 2026 season on Sunday at William Smith College, that's in Geneva, beating Maine Endwell 40-7 to prove the reigning New York State Public High School Athletic Association Class C champions aren't going to miss a beat. The Panthers had a 14-7 halftime lead, and the Spartans were competing the state champs. To Pioneer coach Chris Edwards, it was a familiar scene from last year's playoff run. The Panthers were in a close game and having to find a way to separate. Just looking at the girls when we were talking to them at halftime, they had that relaxed calmness about them, Edwards said. They played in so many big games over the course of their time, the girls were just locked in. The calm demeanor translated into a 26-0 second-half shutout. By the time the final whistle blew, the 40-7 score was an ideal season-opening win for the reigning champs. The relationship between a coach and a quarterback is always the pulse of the team. At Pioneer, that bond is literal. The connection between Edwards and his daughter, junior quarterback Ellie Edwards, has evolved from a backyard catch into one of the best offenses in the state. Last year, Ellie Edwards stepped into the pocket as a first-year quarterback and looked like a multi-year starter. She finished her All-Western New York first-team season with 2,115 passing yards and 42 touchdowns, adding 733 yards and 10 scores on the ground. I feel like I'm a little more nervous because I know there's a target on our backs, Ellie Edwards said. I feel like we've already been there. We've already done it, so we know what it takes to go and do it again. Personally, my goal this year is to just be more consistent and able to shake things off like bad plays so they don't lead into the next play. For Chris, coaching his daughter provides a unique vantage point on the team's growth. He's watched this group evolve from ninth graders into a veteran core of 7 seniors who have spent 4 years in the program. It's been really exciting to see all the new things we've been able to put in this year and just continue to teach them more football, Chris Edwards said. The evolution of the game has been incredible. We can't just show up and just run the same offenses and defenses that we ran last year. If we don't get better, we're not going to be state champions again.
And Pioneer, by the way, they didn't mention that. It's from the arcade area.
It is.
My siblings all went there. My family lived in Delavan, which is just south of there.
Yeah, they call it Delavan there.
Well, they call it Delavan, yeah. But everybody had, Chile, only they call themselves Chile.
Indeed.
And Mexico calls themselves Mexico. Well, now from the Associated Press, the Yanks top Giants as robot umpire debuts. Aaron Judge went hitless on opening day for the first time and struck out 4 times for the first time since September of 2024, but the New York Yankees still produced plenty of offense and beat San Francisco 7-0 Wednesday night in a debut of the Giants manager Tony Vitello as the Major League season began. Jose Caballero drove in the go-ahead run with an RBI single in a 5-second run. Max Fried, 1-0, allowed 2 hits and 6 1/3 innings to become just the 5th Yankees pitcher since 1969, with at least 6 1/3 shutout innings on opening day, joining Catfish Hunter in 1977, Ron Guidry in 1980, Rick Rhoden in 1988, and David Cohn in 1996. New York won an opener with a shutout on the road for the first time since 1967. That must feel good. Caballero singled in the second, and Ryan McMahon followed with a 2-run single before Austin Wells' single prompted a mound visit for the Giants pitcher Logan Webb. Trent Grisham hit a 2-run triple and was checked by medical staff after a hard slide into third. Judge was booed before the game and during each at-bat as he began his 11th big league season. Boy, that's got to be disheartening. The California native had been pursued by the Giants during free agency in 2022, but he ultimately chose the Yankees' $360 million 9-year contract offer. Webb, a 15-game winner last season, made his fifth start on opening day and was tagged for 6 earned runs, 7 in all, and 9 hits over 5 innings. The 47-year-old Vitello made a big jump from coaching the University of Tennessee. And Caballero loses challenge. Caballero thought for sure the pitch from Webb had missed the strike zone, so he challenged, making Major League history in the process. Caballero lost the first challenge taken in the Major League Baseball's so-called robot empire, unsuccessfully appealing a strike by the Giants' right-hander. Caballero didn't hesitate. "Nope, I wanted to go for it," he said. Webb started the 4th inning with a 90.7 mile-per-hour sinker on the upper inner corner that was called a strike by Bill Miller, a Major League umpire since 1997. Caballero tapped his helmet, and the 12 Hawkeye cameras of the automated ball strike system upheld Miller's decision in a graphic shown on Oracle Park scoreboard. "I thought it was a little higher than what it showed," Caballero said. "I think it's really good. Keep everyone accountable at it. It gives us a chance to really see how good we are with the zone or not. I wish it was the other way around. I'm trying to get the overturned call, but this time I didn't." The automated system has been tested in the minor leagues since 2019 and was used during Major League spring training in 2025 and 26. Some managers have said they will still find ways to argue and get ejected. Before Wednesday's game, Yankees manager Aaron Boone spoke in support of ABS and the importance of discussing decisions on challenges with his team ahead of time. "We've had a lot of dialogue at it. It's something we've poured a lot into, and I've certainly," Boone said. "It's become one of the things I've kind of tried to lead the charge on a little bit. Another kind of end of spring meeting with all the position players and catchers at the end, just kind of running through different ones that came up and give my feedback on it. I've been very direct with them during spring, and as far as the fact that if I thought one was really good, or conversely, if one was terrible." Boone stressed this will be a learning process for everybody involved. "I've tried to be real direct with them and why," he said. "I feel like we're going to be good at it. That's the expectation. I'm sure we'll continue to evolve with it." Vitello said he's had to remind himself earlier Wednesday that robots might take over at times. "I've got to be honest with you. One thing I was looking at is, who are the umpires tonight?" he said. "You get on Google, the first thing you see, there's going to be a robot umpire. And it was only for a millisecond, but I kind of freaked out." Well,
if you're looking to compile a list of people who don't like the idea of robot umpires, feel free to put me at the top of the list.
well,
Oh, well.
oh well.
Time for some advice.
Time for some advice.
37 minutes past the hour. We've got to get some advice from Eric here. Dear Eric, a close family member who is a beloved community member died unexpectedly on my birthday several years ago. People reach out to remember him on my birthday, but don't remember that it's my birthday, too.
Uh-oh.
I will never forget that he died on my birthday, and I appreciate how much he meant to people, but it makes me sad. I wish people would reach out on his birthday or on another day, but it is what it is. What can I say that would be appropriate? I know he would never want me to feel sad, but it truly bums me out that people contact me on his death day. Any suggestions for moving on and setting boundaries? Signed, Forgotten Birthday. Dear Birthday, if these messages are adding to your grief rather than comforting you, you may want to avoid them on your birthday altogether by putting your phone on Do Not Disturb or setting it aside. You're not under any obligation to respond right away, or at least at all, to these messages. Were you to decide that these kinds of texts or calls aren't something you can engage with on your birthday, it may open up new possibilities for you for how you commemorate the day, and also may put the messages in a different category for you. For instance, you may decide that what would really help you on your birthday is to hear from a few friends and to do something special for yourself. Try to be proactive about setting that up by telling your friends or family what you need and by making a plan that you like. You can also be proactive about telling those who usually reach out to you that you'll be commemorating your birthday in a different way this coming year, and you won't be as responsive by phone. Good luck with that. Next, Dear Eric, I am a mom of elementary-age kids. I've been good friends with 3 other moms, I'll call them A, B, and C, for several years. I like them all, but C is a bit of a chronic complainer. So she gave her the letter C. She's never completely off base, but her complaints tend to be mostly first-world problems, and their frequency is a bit exhausting. The four of us have a monthly mom dinner at a local restaurant. Last year, I went through an extremely rough patch. Within the span of 1 month, my parents' house flooded, my mom passed away, my husband and I appeared to be on the verge of losing our jobs, and I received a cancer diagnosis. It was the worst time of my life. Oh, my. We had a mom dinner scheduled shortly after all this, and C texted beforehand to say she was sick and wouldn't be attending. When I arrived, A and B were discussing C and how frequently she had been sick in the preceding months. They then told me they were planning to send her some flowers to cheer her up. I was taken aback. None of them had sent me flowers or even a sympathy card. Adding to my confusion, B's mother had passed away the previous year, and I had brought her flowers and a small gift to keep her son occupied so she could have some time to herself. She seemed genuinely appreciative at the time, and I don't understand why she wouldn't reciprocate in some way. I'm not a flower scorekeeper, but I truly don't understand why A and B told me they were sending C flowers knowing what I had just been through. Telling me felt cruel, even if unintentionally so. I don't think of either A or B as cruel people. Based on our other interactions, including many since that dinner, I do believe they like me. This all happened several months ago, but I'm still struggling to get past the hurt their comment caused, and it has affected our friendships. How should I proceed with them? And signed, hurting, confused, and flowerless. Dear Flowerless, I'm so sorry for what you've gone through. You deserve friends who show up for you and support you in the way that you need. Comparing their response to you with their response to C was initially helpful in as much as it may have highlighted some underlying issues in the friendship. But as with any comparisons, it's ultimately going to make you unhappy. You should have a conversation with your friends, but focus less on what they did for others and more on what you need them to do for you. There's room for questions about why they didn't give you flowers, but I think your friendship will be stronger if you talk about what your expectations are for the future and ask them about their expectations and assumptions about the friendship. They can't redo the past, but communication can make the job easier.
Well, I'm back again to the front page. Study says chatbots give us bad advice in a bid to flatter users. This is from Matt O'Brien of the Associated Press. Artificial intelligence chatbots are so prone to flattering and validating their human users, they're giving bad advice that can damage relationships and reinforce harmful behaviors. According to a new study that explores the dangers of AI telling people what they want to hear. The study, published Thursday in the journal Science, tested 11 leading AI systems and found they all show varying degrees of syncophancy. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Behavior that was overly agreeable and affirming. The problem is not just that they dispense inappropriate advice, but that people trust and prefer AI more when the chatbots are justifying their convictions. This creates perverse incentives for sycophancy to persist. The very feature that causes harm also drives engagement, said the study led by researchers at Stanford University. The study found that a technical flaw already tied to some high-profile cases of delusional and suicidal behavior in vulnerable populations is also pervasive across a wide range of people's interactions with chatbots. It's subtle enough that they might not notice a particular danger to young people turning to AI for many of life's questions while their brains and social norms are still developing. One experiment compared the responses of popular AI assistants made by companies including Anthropic, Google, Meta, and OpenAI to the shared wisdom of humans in a popular Reddit advice forum. Was it okay, for example, to leave trash hanging on a tree branch in a public park if there was no trash cans nearby? OpenAI's ChatGPT blamed the park for not having trash cans, not the questioning of litterer who was commendable for even looking for one. Real people thought differently in the Reddit forum, abbreviated as AITA, after a phrase for someone asking if they are a cruder form for a jerk. The lack of trash bins is not an oversight. It's because they expect you to take your trash with you when you go, said a human written answer on Reddit that was upvoted by other people on the forum. The study found that, on average, AI chatbots affirm the user's actions 49% more often than other humans did, including in queries involving deception, illegal or socially irresponsible conduct, and other harmful behaviors. We were inspired to study this problem as we began noticing that more and more people around us were using AI for relationship advice and is sometimes being misled by how it tends to take your side no matter what, said author Myra Chang, a doctoral candidate in the computer science at Stanford. Computer scientists building the AI large language models behind chatbots like ChatGPT have long been grappling with the intrinsic problems in how these systems present information to humans. One hard-to-fix problem is hallucination, the tendency of AI language models to spout falsehoods because of the way they are repeatedly predicted in the next word in a sentence based on all the data they've been trained on. Sycophancy is in some ways more complicated. While a few people are looking to AI for factually inaccurate information, they might appreciate, at least in a moment, a chatbot that makes them feel better about making the wrong choices. While much of the focus on chatbot behavior has centered on its tone that had no bearing on the results, said co-author Sinu Lee, who joined Chang on a call with reporters ahead of the study's publication, we tested that by keeping the content the same but making the delivery more neutral, but it made no difference, said Lee, a postdoctoral fellow in psychology. So it's really about what the AI tells you about your actions. In addition to comparing chatbots and Reddit responses, the researchers conducted experiments observing about 2,400 people communicating with AI's chatbot about their experiences with interpersonal dilemmas. People who interacted with this over-affirming AI came away more convinced that they were right and less willing to repair the relationship, Lee said. That means they weren't apologizing, taking steps to improve things, or changing their own behavior. Lee said the implications of the research could even be more critical for kids and teenagers who are still developing the emotional skills that come from real-life experiences with social friction, tolerating conflict, considering other perspectives, and recognizing when you're wrong. Finding a fix to AI's emerging problems would be critical as society still grapples with the effects of social media technology after more than a decade of warnings from parents and child advocates. In Los Angeles on Wednesday, a jury found both Meta and Google owned YouTube liable for harms to children using their services. In New Mexico, a jury determined that Meta knowingly harmed mental health and concealed what it knew about child sexual exploitation on its platforms. Google's Gemini and Meta's open source Llama model were among those studied by the Stanford researchers, along with OpenAI's ChatGPT, Anthropic's Claude, and chatbots from France's Mistral and Chinese companies Alibaba and DeepSeek. Of leading AI companies, Anthropic has done the most work, at least publicly, in investigating the dangers of sycophancy, finding in a 2024 research paper that it is a general behavior of AI assistants, likely driven in part by human preference judgments favoring sycophantic responses. It urged better oversight and in December explained its work to make its latest models the least sycophantic of any to date. None of the companies immediately responded Thursday to messages seeking comment about the science study. In medical care, researchers say sycophantic AI could lead doctors to confirm their first hunch about a diagnosis rather than encourage them to explore further. In politics, it could amplify more extreme positions by reaffirming people's preconceived notions. It could even affect how AI systems perform in fighting wars, as illustrated by an ongoing legal fight between Anthropic and President Donald Trump's administration over how to set limits on military AI use. The study doesn't propose specific solutions, although both tech companies and academic researchers have started to explore ideas. A working paper by the United Kingdom's AI Security Institute shows that if a chatbot converts a user's statement to a question, it is less likely to be sycophantic in its response. Another paper by researchers at Johns Hopkins University also shows how the conversation is framed. How the conversation is framed makes a big difference. The more emphatic you are, the more sycophantic the model is, said Daniel Khashoggi, an assistant professor of computer science at Johns Hopkins, and he said it's hard to know if the cause is chatbots mirroring human societies or something different because they are really, really complex systems. Sycophancy is so deeply embedded into chatbots that Chang said it might require tech companies to go back and retrain their AI systems to adjust which types of answers are preferred. Chang said a simpler fix could be if AI developers instruct their chatbots to challenge their users more, such as starting a response with the words, "Wait a minute." Her co-author Lee said there is still time to shape how AI interacts with us. You can imagine an AI that, in addition to validating how you're feeling, also asks what the other person might be feeling, Lee said, or that even says maybe close it up and go have this conversation in person. And that matters here because the quality of our social relationships is one of the strongest predictors of health and well-being we have as humans. Ultimately, we want AI that expands people's judgment and perspectives rather than narrows it. Well, that's something else. I got a work to look up now. I never saw that one before.
Oh, yeah, I haven't seen that form. Sycophant is a word I've seen, but that form of it. Well, Mike Petro reports that with a little over 2 months until the Buffalo Bills expect to have their new stadium substantially completed, some areas inside still need a lot of work. The enormous space that is to become the Suite Lounge at the northwest portion of the stadium is one of them. Significant interior and drywall work needs to get done in that space where suite seat holders will come to congregate pre-game. But that work is going on constantly and feverishly around the entirety of the building. According to John Polka, Vice President of Stadium Development for the Bills, the site had as many as 1,600 workers on it at one time. It's being done so quickly that the Suite Lounge, which is below the stadium suites and the exclusive Founders Club and can also be used for events of up to 700 people, will look entirely different by next week. With the number of crews we have here and the amount of hours they work, this is probably 5 days' worth of work, Polka said during a tour of the over $2 billion stadium. You apply that to the entire building and you see how this is coming together so quickly. Things change out here constantly. The approximately 3-year construction project is about 93% complete, and the Bills are now making the move to ramp up the operations portion of the building. That's about 5 percentage points from where the Bills would like to be by June 1st, when construction manager Gilbane Turner turns the project and building over to them. The team actually has until July 1st to reach substantial completion as part of its deal with the state, which will become the stadium leaseholder as Erie County transfers the land to the Bills campus this summer. When the Bills reach substantial when the Bills reach substantial completion, the county will conduct a final review and give the team its temporary certificate of occupancy for the building. The Bills expect to start hosting events throughout different parts of the stadium starting in July to make sure the building is operating properly. Around mid-August, the team will host its first preseason games in the stadium. Somewhere in between, the Bills will bring in the return of the blue and red practice. There's a lot of intricacies in the scheduling, Polka said. We're just a few months away from running this facility, which means a lot of the things we're doing is on the back end, coming in and understanding how to do that. Other parts of the stadium are completed or near completion from a construction standpoint. For example, the Field Club, an area that provides unique access for fans at the field level, has been turned over to the team to prepare for furniture arrival in about a month. The premium space for ticket holders in the 100 level has room for 1,200 fans with a bright red bar inspired by the Bills logo, a food service, and pizza oven area and DJ booth. Public art will be displayed on the walls, and the team is also waiting on signs, sound systems, and TVs for the space. There's also access to the Bills player tunnel out to the stadium from the locker rooms and an area to watch the post-game news conference. We did a lot of traveling 4 years ago, and I would say we have very few places like this in the league, said Frank Cravata, the Bills' senior vice president for stadium design. The whole idea down here is a lot of fun, high energy, and access to the team. Most of the stadium seats have been installed. About 95% of the more than 60,000 seats are in. with the final ones to be done over the next month. The project began in May with bracket supports and vertical brackets being placed before rail mounts that hold and support the main body of the seats were installed. In the end zone on the stadium's south side, seat covers have begun being taken off, revealing the blue and red Bills colors. The gradient seat pattern going from red to blue and blue to red around the stadium was done to create a fun design rather than focusing on building in the team logo or something legible, Gravata said. There's really no rhyme or reason behind it. It's purely random, he said. The color, when all the seats are uncovered, is going to be incredible. The audio experience inside the stadium will be like nothing Bills fans have ever heard at a home game. 32 raised speakers have been built into the stadium canopy, with hundreds of auxiliary speakers to pick up gaps in sound around the stadium. The current stadium has 4 raised speakers. Audio testing will start in May. We can move sound around the building, and we have a lot of fun with that, Gravata said. Video boards have been hung on each side of the stadium, but not yet turned on. The Bills are waiting on the production equipment necessary to put content on the boards. The Highmark Stadium sign has been hung over the video screen on the north side of the stadium. The team will be working through a list of items to complete in June and July, but that won't stop the soft opening of the stadium. That will likely include using the field club, concourses, and other areas in July for smaller group outings as the team ramps up to use the entirety of the facility. It's a huge undertaking to get to the point we're at, and we're now just focusing on getting finished. When fans walk into this building, they'll experience it as it was intended.
Yeah. Well, we're coming to the end of our time of reading, and I was taking a quick look at some of these comics here, and this one's a bit visual, but I find it funny, and that's Break of the Day. And on the countertop, you see a bunch of different kinds of blenders, like a regular blender, a bottle blender, one of those blender sticks, and a bottle, all kinds of stuff. And they're all standing together, talking to the coffee maker, saying, "We're a blended family."
Ouch. I like Family Circus. Mom's spraying a area with air freshener, and Tali's saying, "Outdoors are the best air fresheners as roses and lawns being mowed."
Well, you've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for today, Friday, March 27th of 2026. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. And your readers today have been
Don Williams, it's great to be back.
We missed you. And, I love my reading partners, but we missed you. And JJ Patek, thank you for listening.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which